Hi everyone, welcome back to Woman Carrying Man. I'm Jake. Today I'm doing a solo video, another director ranking video. I've had a lot of fun doing these, although I felt a specific sense of weight when approaching this one. Not just because David Lynch recently passed away, but also because so many of these movies are important to me and my opinions have changed a lot about some of them. There's a movie on this list that when I first saw it 10 years ago, I gave it a 1 star. That upon rewatching it this week, it's one of my favorite Lynch movies, which is crazy. His movies have such a profound impact on you, depending on when you see them, how you see them, why you see them. They're mirrors in a lot of ways. And in the wake of his passing, cool to see a lot of people revisiting his work and talking about his work. To me, this ranking exercise isn't about saying, oh, these movies are trash, these movies are great. I'm just trying to express where these movies stand to me, where I stand in relationship to them right now. Small tangent, I've been listening to the Blank Check podcast. I've just been diving into that recently. Really enjoy the David Lynch series, which they did recently, and that's been fun. So there were a few movies that were blind spots for me that I had put off either because they're intimidating and I was kind of scared to watch them, or because I didn't have as much interest in them. So I watched those and I revisited a couple of the beloved ones that I've seen. And I just gotta say, it was really great. Like, this was a lot of fun. Kind of cozy in some ways because it's like I've, loved his movies for so long, but I'm a huge fan of Twin Peaks. I love the original series. I love The Return, and for some reason I had never seen Fire Walk with Me. I felt scared to watch it in a sense because it has this reputation of being very disturbing and sad, and I was like, I need to save that for, I had the criterion. I'm like, I'm going to save that for a special day, and I did that this week, and that was a fantastic experience. So I had some all-timer just movie viewing experiences this week when trying to complete this list, and now I've seen all 10 of his feature films. I'm only ranking his feature films. I'm not including any extended TV pilots. I'm not including short films. I'm not including Twin Peaks: The Return, which some people say that it's one, 18-hour movie or whatever. I'm sorry, I can't go along. I can't. First off, it'd be like the best thing. I think The Return is one of the best things he's ever made, but I'm not including that in the ranking. I think it's not fair. I mean, it's a 16-hour TV show. So let's get to the list. Starting from the bottom, number 10, I gotta do it. It's Dune. It seems like the obvious choice because David Lynch disowns it himself. He doesn't even say like it's his movie. Drastically altered the course of his career. He had success with Eraserhead on a cult level. He had success with The Elephant Man on like a huge level, but this was like a new thing. This was like him jumping up to Spielberg and trying to make this epic film, but also feel personal and dealing with all these. I mean, it's a classic way in over your head and dealing with this material. It's really interesting to see his career in a lot of ways as a reaction to this experience and wanting full control and kind of having a much looser connection to the art form. Dune itself, this movie itself is cool. Like, I enjoyed watching it. For what it's trying to do, it doesn't succeed. It was tampered with. He didn't have final cut. A lot was cut out. But I think regardless, we don't need to know all this stuff. And I get some of that was added in by the studio of like, we need to have all this voiceover explaining this stuff. But also, there's clearly in the scene construction and in this how this script was built, it just feels like a lot of, we need to explain this and this and this and this and this. And it feels almost like we're trying to figure out how to do this kind of sci-fi story. A serious Star Wars in a sense. How do we make the audience understand any of this? And I think when compared to the new Dune movies, it's just such a drastic leap of, I guess we trust audiences more in some ways, at least with the sci-fi genre, maybe not with other stuff, but sci-fi and fantasy, I think audiences are way more used to those genres. So to me, the pleasures of this movie are kind of secondary. It's not like the thrust of the movie that gets me going. It's not the character dynamics. It's, wow, these are some cool, weird scenes. I like this actor's face. I like the set design. I like the costumes. These are weird choices that you wouldn't see in most movies. That kind of stuff. The first half is slow, just all exposition. The second half is so rushed. Everyone talks about this. I mean, this movie is discussed and compared to the new Dunes so much because it's fascinating seeing a case of adaptation. In some ways, I feel like this is more faithful in tone to Frank Herbert's writing than the new movies, which kind of, flesh out Johnny, Lady Jessica, and create more, movie style cinematic relationships. This movie maintains the kind of weird clunkiness of the novel that is so wonderful, and I love the book, and I think that's why I do enjoy this movie, which I hadn't seen in full until now. I'd only seen it in pieces growing up. So, bottom of the list. Sorry. Next up is The Straight Story. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd, and some people were coming after me with pitchforks. Look, I grew up thinking this movie was the lame one that no one liked. But now there's like a huge following. People love this movie. I hadn't seen it until now, largely because it just sounds, this is on me, right? For some reason, I can't go along with the story. It just feels so, well, David Lynch didn't write the script. It's his most normal, quote-unquote, movie. It's just a straightforward story about an old man driving a tractor across the country to go visit his brother who had a stroke. He meets people along the way, and they have warm exchanges and gives people valuable lessons, and there's sweet moments, and it takes its time, and it's a perfectly fine, sweet little movie. I just didn't connect with it. And I think also, like, I was not receptive to what it was trying to do. I wasn't open to it. Things are kind of hectic here with the baby, so there's interruptions and everything. It was fine. It's just not my thing. It felt very sentimental, a very nostalgic sentimentality of, like, rural America, an outsider's view of what rural America is, like this kind of sweet, romanticizing it in a way that I didn't gel with. Anyways, my thoughts are informed with The Straight Story. This could be one of those things that grows on me. Next on the list is The Elephant Man. This was one I really needed to rewatch because it's been quite a long time since I saw it, and I've only seen it once. I know that at the time when I saw it, I was a little underwhelmed because I'd heard it's this emotionally powerful story, and it is. I mean, it is very emotionally powerful, very well done and restrained, and I think it lacks a lot of the sentimentality I detected in The Straight Story. It just felt very, wow, like this is just very well done. But it just was like, okay, that's cool. It didn't feel special in the way that his other movies do. Maybe another filmmaker doing it, it would be like, yeah, this is an all-timer for them, but again, because it's David Lynch, there's so many masterpieces we got to get through. I wanted to rewatch this. I couldn't find it streaming anywhere. I know it was on Criterion Channel for a while. I tried watching it. I know the Criterion disc was out, but the Criterion Blu-ray is not available right now. I have no idea why, and it's not available to stream anywhere. So I don't know what's going on with the rights to that movie. I feel bad. I now definitely really want to rewatch it. Next up on the list is Eraserhead, and I love Eraserhead. I don't know why it's so low on the list, but that's what's so crazy about these lists is that things just change. It's like Eraserhead's a perfect movie, but why is it so low? Maybe because I feel reluctant to rewatch it and have it fresh in my mind, because this is a movie about being a parent, right? I think that's my interpretation. I think that's a lot of people's interpretations. There's a baby-like figure in it. David Lynch's first film. He spent years making it at AFI. Very surreal, doesn't explain itself, but the imagery is just gorgeous, bizarre, but has this beautiful, sad quality to it. I mean, it is like the seed of David Lynch. Moods, his styles that develops and blossoms over the years, and this is like a raw, unvarnished version, and it's about, I think, just having a kid and the anxieties, and for that reason, right now, I felt like maybe I don't need to rewatch this, or maybe I should. I'll watch it with my kid. Next on the list is Lost Highway. Recently, we talked about this. I recommended this for Sardonicast. We talked about it. I've seen this probably 4 or 5 times now. It's not my favorite David Lynch movie, but it's so expertly done. It's kind of like this perfectly made Lynch movie. The reason why it's always edited is I always rewatch it because I keep thinking, man, this is going to be the time when it really connects with me 100%. And I do connect with it a lot. It's a beautiful movie about identity and violence and the trappings of noir, and it's done very well, but is so bleak. It is just, in so many of his darkest movies, there's that little glimmer of like hope. Even in Eraserhead, there's that little bit of, okay, there's something there. There's something beautiful in all of this darkness. But in Lost Highway, I just really don't like the characters. David Lynch said that he was fascinated with the O.J. Simpson trial, and this is like, all right, you're exploring the mind space of a killer tries to reckon with murder. It's kind of a brutal watch. It leaves you feeling empty. It's great, but yeah. Next up is the movie I just finished yesterday. This is the last of the list that I saved for last on purpose. Inland Empire. This could be recency bias. Maybe I'm placing this too high on the list or too low. Who knows? In awe of what it is, kind of in the same way I admire and love Tree of Life, because it is like this purely indulgent expression from an artist that is just so wonderful that this was made. I love that this was the arc of his career, just getting to this place where he's using early shitty video camera footage to make this pure audiovisual nightmare. Doesn't have a structure, doesn't have like a script. Well, maybe there's a structure. I'm sure there is a structure, but there's not like there's no skeleton to the movie from what I understand how it was made. It was just a lot of building it as they went along over the years, and Laura Dern claims to not know most of what was going on. She is the center of this movie. The tagline for the movie is "A Woman in Trouble." It is about Hollywood, yes, and the first hour of the movie I was like, okay, we're doing a version of Mulholland Drive, right? I don't think so. Maybe somewhat, but you get into hours 2 and 3, there's a lot of scenes in Poland. I'm like, okay, how does this connect to Inland Empire in California? But from what I gathered, personas, how we carry personas with us through life and kind of shapeshift depending on where we are, who we are, our age, Look, me trying to explain Inland Empire, it's a mirror of yourself in a way. It's like Lynch is letting you in on him, but he's not giving you much of a lifeline, if anything. He's just saying, all right, let this wash over you. You're going to want to try to figure it out, but there isn't a path. And at times it becomes a little too much because your brain just gets overloaded and things start to feel just random. And that's the negative side to this movie, that there were times when I was legit struggling to stay awake. Not just because I'm sleep deprived, but there's nothing to latch on to. I'm seeing a lot of repetitive imagery at this point. Like, where are we heading? By the, end of the second hour and into the third hour, I was really gelling with this. I thought it nailed the landing. There's some genuinely haunting and upsetting and disturbing imagery in this. And it feels like early YouTube in a great and gross way. It's an ugly looking movie in so many ways, and that's so perfect to it. I don't know, I just love the idea that Lynch was filming this himself, handheld. He's holding the camera 2 inches away from everyone's face. It's so unlike anything else, and I think that's why it's so wonderful. And I love that Lynch was so on the cutting edge of this new era of digital filmmaking, and not just using it to try to replicate film, but to use it as a new language. I think it's just magnificent. I love it. Next up on the list, this used to be my number 1 favorite David Lynch movie, and I'm shocked it is this low, actually. Number 4, Blue Velvet. This was my introduction to David Lynch. This was a movie that, in my imagination, I had read Roger Ebert's review where he hated this when it came out. A lot of critics did, for its depiction of violence towards women, and all that. I'm not going to get into all that. To me, this was a lurid film. Oh my God, the famous Blue Velvet. There's disturbing scenes. Watching Eyes Wide Shut for the first time. These movies that have this infamous reputation, and it blew me away. I connected with Jeffrey, the character, in a kind of you want to see the world, and at the age I was when I first saw it, in high school or whatever, I'm I want to go see this side of the world and understand it, and kind of being horrified too at the depths of humanity and what is actually out there. I mean, it's so fascinating. It is such a perfect distillation of Lynch's themes, and he has many themes and whatever, but it's funny if that's become the vanilla David Lynch movie that is yep, all right, we got typical, it's like a mystery story. It's very Hitchcockian. Then we get some of the Lynch stuff with Dennis Hopper and Isabella Rossellini and fire imagery, and there is some of that there, but it is less weird than I remember, maybe because I have now seen so much of David Lynch and gone into Twin Peaks: The Return and all of that, that this movie feels almost like quaint. It's kind of crazy. It has a staying power. It is a magnificently made movie. A classical build-up and subverts that. And it's shocking because, okay, maybe I can get into this conversation. No. I'll save this for later, but I'll talk about the issue of irony and all of that. Dennis Hopper is fantastic. Laura Dern, her monologue in the car, just all of the emotion that Lynch can conjure without making it feel fake. I mean, it feels fake in a way, but in a good way. I can imagine audiences seeing this and going, this dude just thinks this is all a joke. Sit with it earnestly and recognize, like, no, this is a sincere statement. Like, this man loves suburbia and he loves messed up shit too. It's the dichotomy. It's that weird nature in humans that is Jeffrey in this movie. That's Lynch. It's in all of us. This movie just perfectly captures that. Blue Velvet. What a movie. All right. So the final three movies. This was surprising to me. When I was just making this list, I was trying to be very intuitive, very Lynchian about it. I'm not trying to be objective about this. Just what do I feel right now? What am I so in love with right now? Number 3, Wild at Heart. This is the movie I gave 1 star that I hated when I saw it, I think in 2015. Just starting college, for whatever reason, I hated it. I thought it was a sick joke. I thought that, all right, this movie isn't taking itself seriously. It's sneering at the audience. It's just doing this over-the-top violence just to try to be funny and make you squirm and puke. And it's just like a mean movie that wants you to feel bad and doesn't take any of it seriously and just thinks this is all just life is a dumb joke. You know, like, it's what probably a lot of audiences, and I think Roger Ebert saw when he saw Blue Velvet, like, oh, this guy is just like laughing at us or mocking the genre or mocking his characters because it has a campy quality to it. It's over the top. It's melodramatic. Weird elements. It's like oddly sincere in moments and then really goofy and silly in other moments. Again, like with Blue Velvet, except this one, for whatever reason, I think it was the violence. It was just the mood I was in, you know? Like, I just didn't want to see this shit. It was showing me a side of human beings that I really hated, and I was blind to amazing love of these characters that Lynch has in this movie. Sailor and Lula, Laura Dern, Nicolas Cage giving wildly over-the-top performances, and Diane Ladd, just incredible as the Wicked Witch. They're on the run, and I'm more familiar now with like classic noir. Of course I'm going to like this movie more now. It's just so fun and so ridiculously funny. Like, I think that's part of what I learned on this new rewatch was, like, it's okay to find this funny. Like, it's okay to think that this over-the-top gore is kind of funny. These moments can be looked at earnestly and with a sense of comedy. There's a moment when Diane Ladd is talking to, you know, the hitman who's like, you need to go. This man is dangerous. Nicolas Cage is the most dangerous person I've ever seen. And then it does a hard cut to Cage and Dern in the car. And they're like dancing to some old 50s, like goofy, silly song. And he's just like he's like saluting as he's driving. Like, it's so silly, just so fun that when this hard, bleak shit happens, it makes it all the more sad because, and I see it now through this lens, like Sailor and Lula represent like pure love, goodness, passion. You know, there's this love for like sex and energy, and Nicolas Cage is always kicking and they're dancing, and it's this like young love, and the whole world is evil and violent and out to get them and wants to crush them. There's that fantastic scene where Lula is trying to find music in the car, and she keeps going through all these like tragic news stories of, oh, there was another suicide, blah, 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 all this stuff. And she just goes nuts and gets out of the car and screams like, get me some music. Finally gets music on the radio and they dance, and that's the movie. I think the movie is kind of an ode to fantasy to the movies, to ignoring the bullshit and believing in love. It's a really sweet movie. Like, it's kind of touching. I felt very touched by the end of this film, which I won't spoil or anything. And all the parallels to The Wizard of Oz make that evident too, that this is a love letter to fantasy and believing in love and romance and all of these wonderful things that we go to the movies for. I think it was fantastic. I also want to say Harry Dean Stanton delivers a line to Diane Ladd in this movie. He says, I love you to her in the most heartbreaking, like, it is the most incredible like moment. Like, I got choked up just watching him say this line. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, he's such a great actor. And the brilliance of Lynch to let this character that could have just been like a weird stereotype of like a dumb private detective, which he is. He's like a dumb private detective, but he gives him that moment to be so sincerely like heartbreaking. I just love it. I love everything this time watching it. It might even go higher in my rankings, but I'm so happy that I picked it up on Blu-ray because it is hard. It's a hard movie to pick up now. If you do see it on Blu-ray, Shout Factory has it on. Go see it. It's not streaming anywhere. All right, next up on the list, number 2, Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive is a masterpiece. I think everyone can kind of agree on that, even people who don't love this movie. The first time I saw it, I was going in with that reputation of this is a masterpiece. It's one of the masterpieces of the 21st century. It's about Hollywood in a lot of ways, again, exploring themes that he later would touch on in Inland Empire and also in Lost Highway. I knew going in the first time I saw this when I was in high school, I knew that this started out as a pilot, a TV pilot that got canceled. And then Lynch got some funding. He meditated on it and figured out how to create this as a movie. I felt like, okay, all these little threads that don't really go anywhere, that was just like a failure, like because it didn't become the show. But I think now, and of course I've seen it many times since then, and ever since it just becomes more beautiful and mysterious. The whole point is that these things aren't resolved. That's not the point of, if it were to become a show, that wouldn't be the point anyways. Just the magical mystery of all of it. It's just so brilliant. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It is that perfect, like the perfect mixture of being just out of reach of reality, of being just out of reach of understanding what's going on. Brilliant dreaminess that Lynch has. And I think he balances it in such a palatable way for people that can latch onto this movie in a way that something like Inland Empire is a lot more alienating. The way it gets resolved and wrapped up, and you can like decipher it in a way. You can go that route, but it's not necessary. When I watch it, I just let the imagery, I let the feelings, the mood wash over me. Just a stunning masterpiece. I love Mulholland Drive. I don't know who doesn't at this point. However, I'm just feeling a little crazy this week. I did say Twin Peaks is one of my favorites. I think The Return is one of the best things he's ever done. And I finally watched Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, and it floored me. For years, at least when I was becoming aware of David Lynch when I was younger, like, I thought this was like a big failure, that everyone hated it. At the time, it was treated as a big failure. It was booed at Cannes Film Festival, didn't make any money. A lot of the actors involved in Twin Peaks were not happy about the direction of where things were going. So I just kind of thought, like, okay, this was just like a misfire, like a movie about a show, like, who cares? Over time, I saw, and I feel like its reputation has grown, that people admire it in a wholly new way, and it is kind of like the beating heart of Twin Peaks now, I see. It is also like Lynch's most tragic movie, I think. It's also maybe his scariest movie. I would be so interested to see what people think who haven't seen any of the shows, because I do think you could watch this and get so much, maybe even more than if you're a viewer of the show trying to go, oh, how does this connect to this and this and this and this and this? Because that's not the point of this movie, I think. It's a tragic story about a young woman, the last week of her life. And it is so sad. And the way Lynch is able to tell this very real story, like, you see like, sadly, this kind of story happens all the time. You watch true crime stories, you watch Netflix, you watch all this crap, and you know about all these horrors in the world. But it takes an artist like David Lynch to look at the mundane horror of this domestic tragedy and go, I want to explore this, and I can look at this from a different angle where you can feel it more as a human being and not as someone peering from above, or like he is pulling you in and asking us to empathize in a new way with the victim of this tragedy and of this whole show, who is, dead before the show even starts. I feel like it's less about Twin Peaks, the town, or anything than it's just Laura Palmer. The first half hour of this movie, or I recommend Red Letter Media, they did a video on Twin Peaks, on this movie. The movie basically starts with static and then someone smashing a TV. I feel like that was almost David Lynch being like, we're done with TV. This is a movie. I don't care about any of that stuff. We're talking about something totally different. We're talking about Laura Palmer. The first half hour of this movie is almost like a weird twisted joke on what Twin Peaks was, of like, all right, we're seeing a murder that preceded Laura Palmer's case, but it's like a similar town to Twin Peaks, but everyone's mean and there's like bad vibes, David Bowie shows up and there's so much weird stuff. It's almost like David Lynch is hitting you on the head with a bat to try to like disorient you right before diving into, this is Laura Palmer's story. This is the last week of her life. It's just kind of unflinching and it's just so sad and heartbreaking. And I think it's like one of the most beautiful artistic statements he's made. And it just so clearly focuses on his interest in violence and tragedy and how to confront that and deal with that. And the ending is very moving. Really recommend Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. I'm really shocked that it's number one on my list. I don't know if it's just recency bias. I don't know if it's because I love all of Twin Peaks, but so happy I saw this and very glad that I undertook this thing so that I could watch it. Anyways, that's my David Lynch ranking. I'm very curious to hear what you all think about my ranking and how would you rank his movies? Do you think The Return counts as a movie or not? Thank you for watching, everyone, and I hope you all have a very happy day. Bye-bye.